Alright, so this feels kind of weird. I haven't recorded anything for podcast or YouTube in a few days, which is strange because for the past, 100 and some days, I was doing a video basically, or a podcast, basically every single day. So I took a few days off for Christmas, and we're getting back at it. Full disclosure, I have not been a big fan of the most recent incarnation of the DC films, for the most part. A few exceptions being that I thought Shazam was pretty good, and the first Wonder Woman film was probably the best out of all of them. Now, because I thought the first film was good, I had hope for the sequel going in. I was skeptically optimistic, at least. And more disclosure, I love the 80s. 80s music, 80s fashion, 80s culture. I mean, some of it I love ironically, but for the most part, it's an authentic love for the music and for a time right before the internet and modern tech. We were on the cusp. Technology was just getting started. It was just starting to get interesting for consumers. But most of life was still very analog. And there's something very nostalgic about that for me. I love it. And so I was definitely looking forward to Wonder Woman 84. 1984 also happens to be the year of my birth, so I'm sure that plays into my interest as well. But enough of that. On to what I actually thought of the film. This wasn't just a movie based in the 1980s. It felt as if it was made in the 1980s. You know, the plot was cheesy, the motivations were cheesy, and the Pascal as Wishmaster was especially cheesy. It reminded me very much of the villains in one of the several Donner Superman films from the late 70s. I know that's not the 80s, but you get what I'm saying. It felt like from the era. It felt like Lex Luthor from the 1970s should have been in it. And also, I loved it. It's not that I thought this was the most amazing film. And in a minute, I'll get into some of the things that I didn't care for. But I very much appreciated how clever it was. It's clear, at least to me, I think it is. I think it's clear that it was purposely made the way it was. It was supposed to really take you back to the time in which it takes place. It takes the audience back in time with it. You're not only viewing a Wonder Woman film that takes place in the 1980s, you are viewing a 1980s Wonder Woman film from the 1980s, from the perspective of the 1980s. It's like you are a consumer back then, and this is what you got. It's so clever, and so damn cool, I think. I think, unfortunately, it went over the heads of some. And also, some got it, but just didn't care for it. And I get that. I get not wanting to spend your time or money watching how clever and ironic a director can be. Pretentious? Maybe. I mean, if you view the film literally and take it at face value, maybe not that great. But for me personally, I appreciated it very much. It was definitely worth the watch, and I'll probably watch it a few more times in the near future. Do me a favor. If you watched it and hated it because it was so cheesy and predictable, please go back and give the film another go through this new lens and see if it improves the experience. Like I said, taken at face value, it's not an awesome modern film. But if you can appreciate what the storytellers are trying to do, I think you can appreciate the film a little bit more. Now, for a few things I did not love. I don't think Chris Pine's character needed to be in this movie at all. I mean, if you're going to bring him back, and I'm not saying that you should, for me, it should have been a few films down the line. It's too soon. I mean, the very next film? Come on. Can you imagine 1940s Peggy Carter returning in The Winter Soldier to have a brand new adventure with Cap? Yes, I know Bucky returned as the Winter Soldier, but somehow that feels different. Alright, I'm being a hypocrite, but in this film, it rubbed me the wrong way. Number 2, the plane. The invisible jet. I get it. They wanted to work it in somehow. And it's kind of cool that they did for the fans of the old 1980s series and for comic book fans. But giving her the ability to make it invisible, a power she never revealed at any time previous, and then miraculously whipping it out when it becomes necessary. I'm sure this power would have come in handy on several other occasions, but no. She just happened to remember that it was a thing. Also, I'm not sure invisibility would make you undetectable on radar. I don't know. I'm not a science major, but it just seems like that's not how that works. Okay. Also, the wishing rock. The magical stone that made the main villain and this entire story possible. I don't know if I liked it. I go back and forth because while I love the cheesiness of everything happening because wishes are being granted by a magic rock, and for me it adds to the silly old-timey superhero nostalgic charm, right? But I just wish the main villain attained his powers in a more creative way. But really, I didn't run into much else in the film that bothered me. It's a DC film, and I don't expect a ton from them. They definitely don't do for me what Marvel films do. But I thought it was clever and charming, and it took me on a time ship to yesteryear. It's definitely not as good as the first, but it's not Justice League or Suicide Squad either. Overall, I enjoyed myself, and I can't ask for much more. Alright, so those are my thoughts on Wonder Woman 1984. If you enjoyed this review, listen, here's what I do on this channel. Every day, I try to do it every day. Most days, I pick a random topic, something that's interesting to me, and I talk about it. It can be anything. It's usually pop culture or entertainment related, but really, it spans everything you can imagine. I talk about everything on this channel. If that's something that interests you, something you can vibe with, then please subscribe for more, or favorite or follow the podcast. And if you decide to stick around and subscribe or favorite or follow the podcast, then I will talk to you again tomorrow. Thanks.